Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled The Program That Didn't Leave and Still Broke College Football. This is an alternate history, but it only changes one thing. What if one program proved you didn't have to leave your conference to become more powerful than it? What if that lesson spread quietly until the sport couldn't unlearn it? This is the alternate story of Clemson, not because they dominated, not because they revolted, but because they stayed. Before we go further, one thing needs to be clear. This is an alternate history timeline. The outcomes may feel vaguely familiar, but the order is different. In this alternate universe, media power shifts earlier, conferences weaken quietly, and Clemson becomes proof of concept. No cartoon villains, no magic money, just incentives doing what incentives do. And that sets the table to the original sin, Clemson staying. The most important decision Clemson makes in this timeline is not leaving. After sanctions, after scrutiny, after leverage appears, Clemson doesn't bolt. They do something way more dangerous. They outgrow the ACC without breaking from it. They schedule aggressively, they accept national exposure, they let rumors work for them, and crucially, they allow media partners to treat them like a national brand while technically remaining quote unquote just another ACC school. That's the lesson. You don't need to escape the system, you just need to transcend it. And you may be thinking to yourself, wouldn't the ACC stop this? In real life, maybe. In this timeline, the ACC can't punish its biggest football asset without admitting it needs them more than they need the league. And should also note that this timeline starts in the 80s, so this is before Florida State's in the ACC picture. And Clemson learned something vital. Enforcement collapses when leverage is asymmetric. And that sets the table for the copycat effect. Once Clemson proves this work, others notice. Not immediately, not publicly, but administrators and media partners start asking, if Clemson can do this without leaving, who else can? That question destabilizes everything. And that sets the table to Miami learning the wrong lesson. Miami looks at Clemson and misunderstands the takeaway. Clemson's lesson was patience. Miami's interpretation is urgency. Miami tries to outgrow the Big East while dragging it along, but without Clemson's institutional insulation. The result? The Big East hollows. And that confirms Clemson's original insight. Staying is safer than jumping, if you're big enough. Now you may be thinking to yourself, isn't Miami's situation totally different? Yes, and that's the point. Clemson shows the upper bound of leverage, Miami shows the failure case. Together, they teach the sport not all brands survive this strategy, only the ones conferences can't afford to lose. And that sets the table for ESPN figuring it out. At this point, ESPN does connect the dots. They realize conferences are interchangeable, brands are not, and Clemson is the cleanest test case. So ESPN adjusts, not dramatically, not maliciously. They simply prioritize Clemson as inventory, not as a conference member. ACC branding fades. Clemson branding sharpens. That's the moment the sport tilts. And that sets the table towards Texas leveraging the strategy. Texas does not invent brand leverage. Clemson already proved it works. Texas just happened to industrialize it. They treat conferences like service providers. They centralize visibility. They dare the system to stop them, and it doesn't. Because Clemson already showed what happens when you try. And now you may be thinking to yourself, but Clemson wasn't trying to change the sport. Correct. And that's also why this is dangerous. Clemson didn't intend to be revolutionary. They were just optimizing locally. Systemic collapse doesn't require villains, just repeatable success. And that sets the stage to the Big Ten thinking it can fix this. And this is where Clemson's shadow finally reaches its limit. The Big Ten watches Clemson's loss in spread and says, we're strong enough to reverse this. But notice the framing. They're not responding to Texas. They're not even responding to ESPN. They're responding to what Clemson normalized, the idea that a program can matter more than its conference without ever leaving it. And that sets the stage for the revolt failing because it was too late. The Big Ten didn't fail at this because it's weak. It fails because Clemson already answered the question, what happens if a conference tries to reassert control? The answer? Brands quietly disengage. No exits, no scandals, just selective cooperation. The revolt does not collapse, it dissolves. Now you'd be thinking to yourself, so is the Clemson villain the villain here? No. Clemson is the proof of concept. The sport chose to copy the part that worked and ignore the part that required restraint. Now, in closing out this universe, Clemson never leaves. They never revolt. They never declare independence. They just stay and teach the sport how to live without rules that matter. By the time anyone tries to stop it, there's absolutely nothing to stop. The most dangerous changes in college football weren't announced. They were demonstrated. And if you enjoyed this alternate history, hit like. It tells the algorithm this kind of deep dive matters. If you disagree, leave a comment. I want to hear which part you'd push back on. And if you want more institution-driven alternate stories like this, subscribe. Because sometimes the program that breaks the system is the one that never leaves it.